Hey guys, I'm going to do another foggy tutorial for you today. I'm using a 12 by 16 stretch canvas by Fredericks. I'm using Midnight Blue craft paint. I think this is Deco Art. I got it at Hobby Lobby. I'm using burnt umber craft paint and Virdian green golden fluid acrylics, and then black and white. And if you've seen any of my blending tutorials, you'll know that it's a great idea to go ahead and mix up your color first before we try to start blending. And then I take a little bit of white paint and mix it in with my color just to make sure it's a color that I want to use. I'll be using my trusty mop brushes today. This one is from my local hobby shop, Hobby Lobby. I don't know why I always say my local hobby shop. And I'll also be using the mop brushes from Color by Felix. I'm going to load up my brush with a ton of paint, and I've got that color mixed with some white, and I'm just really going to saturate the canvas. And then I'll use a clean and dry mop brush to blend that together. And if you struggle with acrylic blending, I have a couple of blending tutorials on my channel that will definitely help you out. I'm going to wipe off most of the paint out of that brush before I start to add some background trees. I want these to be really light and really soft, but I still need them to be darker than my sky. So I kind of just squeezed my brush in a cloth to get out most of that white paint. And now I'm just going to very loosely add some darker blue, and I'm adding some white to that corner because I want that side to stay really nice and foggy. And then I'm going to blend those background trees with a clean and dry mop brush. And it's really not that clean and dry. I used that same brush when I was blending the sky, so it doesn't have to be completely clean. When I'm adding the background trees, it's really important that you know my sky and the background was still wet. And now that I'm adding a second row of background trees, the first layer of background trees is still wet. And that's really the key to making this foggy look with acrylics. Now I'm adding a little more white paint for the fog, and then I'll use that same brush that I was using before and blend that second row of background trees into the background and just kind of soften everything up. I didn't have a whole lot of detail in the background trees, and I do want it to be soft, but I didn't want it to be quite that soft, so I added just a little more dark blue paint. And all of this paint is still wet, so that is the biggest thing that that you'll need to remember when you're painting something like this. Your paint has to stay wet. The last foggy tutorial that I made when I used the green paint, that was the first time I'd ever tried to paint a scene like that with acrylics. And I did learn quite a bit while making that tutorial. So this tutorial is going to reflect the changes and what I learned from the last one that I did. And that starts right now. What I learned from the last one was I should have painted the more detailed background trees, which is what I'm about to paint. I should have made those a lighter color green instead of dark green and then just putting white over top of it. So what I'm going to do now is I mixed up a little bit of the dark blue paint with some white. Now I'm going to get out some white paint and I'll use a new clean and dry mop brush. It is actually clean and dry this time. And I'm going to paint the white just below the blue. And I'm going to work my way up into the blue paint that's still wet. And then I'll use another actually clean and dry mop brush this time, but smaller, and blend those together. And I'm going to work this in sections. I'm not going to try to paint too much at once. And after each section is dry, I will dry it with a hair dryer, remove any kind of brush hair, and then move on to the next section. The darker color blue is a little transparent, and I'm sure it's because it's craft paint and golden fluids. Those are just, really thin, transparent types of paint. So I do have to go over the foreground trees. I think I go over this one once, and then the ones in the very front I go over several times. So just keep that in mind. You may have to give those a couple of extra layers. This is what I was talking about earlier, something that I had learned from the last tutorial. I'm covering up dry blue paint with white paint to make the foggy look, and that's really not what I want to do. I'm not sure why I did that, even though I knew going into this one that's not how I wanted to do it. You can see that it doesn't look as soft and creamy as the fog over here. Guys, my cat is so needy. I think he makes an appearance in just about every video that I do. Just sometimes he gets cut out, but he is so freaking cute. His name is Buddy. Alright guys, that's about it for this one. Let me know in the comments if you found this helpful, and if you want to see more tutorials like this, let me know. Thanks for watching.